Mr. Bamidele Ayemibo, the Chief Executive Officer and Lead Consultant at 3T Impex Trade Academy. Mr. Ayemibo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. How are you today?
Great, good to have you. So we just had the minister there talking about adding value. It's not a new conversation, unfortunately, but we see that it seems that the federal government is looking the way of economic zones now to bring this to bear. So from your observation, talking about trade and all of that, how impactful have our free trade zones, economic zones, whichever way we want to capture it, agro-processing zones, how impactful have they been? How much have they contributed to the economy so far?
Until Dangote came on board, we're not hearing a lot about what's happening in those zones. We have oil and gas free trade zones. Those ones were functional to a very large extent because, of course, we do a lot of shipment of oil and gas. And so you see a number of those ones coming up. That's One oil and gas free trade zone, for example. But what we have within the other one, the one under the NEPSA, the Nigerian Export Processing Zone Authority, which is for the industrial and commercial, not much is happening there as far as I'm concerned. But with what has happened at Lekki Free Trade Zone, with what Dangote is doing, we can see a lot of impact now on the economy. But before now, apart from the oil and gas, all other ones are not really impactful. Not because nothing is happening there, but they're not really very impactful on the economy. But I mean, maybe because of what Dangote has been able to do is what is inspiring the government to want to do more in this direction. We definitely need such zones to encourage businesses to find a place where they can process, add value, and export to be able to add value to the country. But then, of course, they need a lot of support because now in the new tax act, now the tax holiday is no more blanket. There are now conditions for them to enjoy those tax holiday in the free zone. So this policy inconsistency also is now affecting people even going into the zone.
One issue I wanted to bring up because I did go to one of the zones and I had a conversation with some of the stakeholders, and that is a concern also, the impact of the new tax law. But you said before Dangote came on, I mean, it seemed, but we know that the AFDB also has a program targeting these zones. Are you saying that perhaps we have not as a country responded enough to benefit from that initiative of the African Development Bank Group?
No, like I said, the zone have always been operational. I mean, we have Calabar Free Zone, which was the first in Nigeria. We have the Lekki Free Zone. We have the One Free Zone. We have the Ladol. We have Ogun, Kano, and Tinapa. We have a couple of them. But what I'm talking about the impact on the economy. Maybe because of the volume of what is going on at Dangote Refinery, we can see the impact. But of course, the zone have been operating, particularly the oil and gas zones, and I'm now focusing beyond the oil and gas that we've had, like the one on air, to what is now happening because of what Dangote is doing in the free trade zone in Lagos. It's not being, and even for our businesses, because when foreigners come into Nigeria, one of the areas they want to go to is free trade zone. Why? Because of they know the implication. I mean, China, for example, have 22% of their GDP from free zone. In fact, 45% of their FDI is going to free zone. And about 60% of their export is for free zone. Now, China has made a very huge success of free zone, and many other countries around the world. So we have not been able to do a lot in that regard, probably because of education, number one, but more importantly also is because of even infrastructure deficit. Remember, Dangote has to do a lot for himself. Even his power, he has to generate his own power by himself. So a number of other constraints hindering businesses from maximizing the opportunity within this zone.
Yeah, and talking about infrastructure, I don't know if you heard from the Calabar trade zone, there are issues. I wonder if they've been resolved, but I mean, it was just about 3 weeks or so ago. Concerns of insecurity. They say some of their things were getting stolen. Interagency issues, and so there's bureaucracy, and then operators do not even know who to go to because the agencies are clashing over the duties. So obviously, perhaps this shows that we are not mature enough to manage these zones for it to make enough impact as much as it should on the economy.
Very correct. In fact, it's not just those agencies, even for banks. We've not had banks in this zone. If they ordinarily, this is supposed to be offshore. technically, they are not part of Nigeria. So a bank that is in that zone is supposed to be an offshore bank, not necessarily under the regular regulation in Nigeria. So, for example, if you are importing into free zone in Nigeria, you're not supposed to do your regular application via Formem to the government. If you're exporting from that zone, also the same thing. So, and so most of them have to still work with bank outside the zone. So we have not holistically looked at the issues and be able to ensure that all the agencies have a good understanding of what is required, even for the bank to be able to ensure that they have their branches set up there and operate like an offshore bank that is expected, considering the fact that they are not custom zone and they are set to be free. So this is not just in the area of interagency issue, even concerning finance and the like, and banking services is also the same thing. But like you said, it's new in Nigeria where, like I said, we are really beginning to see the need and the impact and the scale and what can be done in that zone because of what Dangote have done in Lekki. And this seems to be a renewed interest for the government. And I believe if we embrace it, of course, we'll probably be able to enjoy what other countries around the world have done with free zones.
And NEBSA is there, the regulator, and of course, they are supposed to. I know when I went to the Lagos Free Zone, Free Trade Zone, of course they have an office there, along with other customs and all of that, and a lot of promises being given. But even there, I did notice that the area wasn't as populated as one would have thought. And now we have this tax reform, which could be, even the CEO of NEBSA says, it's most likely is going to drive some of the operators away. So how do we make our zones more attractive? The first target, obviously, is FDIs, the international companies, even though we do have local players also there. How do we make it more attractive, if maybe I should put it that way, so that we have populated zones to enjoy the benefit and also give out the economic and social benefits that the country expects?
The government must, before we settle a zone, we need to ask ourselves, this is supposed to be industrial zone. It's supposed to be for manufacturing, for export. So it has to be close, of course, to a port. Yeah. I mean, to be able to ship out, number one. But more importantly, is infrastructure like power, road network, power is necessary, port close by are things that will be able to attract businesses to those zones. If there is no gas supply to be able to provide power, if there is no nearby port or a rail to take goods out or to bring stuff in, like some of the issue we have in Lekki, the fact that we're not able to maximize Lekki for import because we expect a rail to move from Lekki, out of Lekki to other parts. Maybe with the coastal rail now, maybe it will be easier for them to be able to. But those are the things that should have been in force even before the zone is completely operational, actually. So road network, infrastructure, ports, access to port, and more importantly, power, are very, very infrastructure that will attract businesses to those zones. Because in Nigeria, in fact, Nigeria does not just call it free trade zone, Nigeria call it Nigeria export processing zone. So ab initio, we wanted, of course, which is the whole idea of a free zone around the world, to be able to make it export focused. The goal is actually to make it export focused. And if we don't make the place conducive for business to be able to set up and begin to export, then, like you said, it's going to be empty. You don't get to see a lot of activity going on in those areas.
All right, so Mr. Yeme, just a few minutes. I did this report from my visit to the trade zone and then a conversation with the NEBSA CEO to see how the reality on ground, at least from Lekki Free Zone, and then the perspective of the CEO of NEBSA. So let's take this report and then we'll come back to you on this conversation. The Nigeria Export Processing Zones Authority, NEBSA, reports that over 40 licensed free zones are in different parts of Nigeria, housing over 500 licensed enterprises. These zones focus on sectors like manufacturing, oil and gas, and logistics. NEBSA promotes and facilitates both local and international investment into licensed free special economic zones which have been approved by the President. They also monitor and evaluate zones operations to ensure strict adherence to standards, establishment and supervision of zonal administrators for effective management, and ensure that economic objectives are achieved. To attract operators, benefits include duty deferral and exemption, customs duties and taxes typically not levied on goods entering a free zone until they move into the domestic market, and no duties are paid on re-exported goods, improving cash flow. Others are simplified and faster customs processing within the free zones, logistics and supply chain optimization, value-added activities, access to infrastructure and services, competitive operating costs, among others.
Those incentives is revenue that should have come to government that we have waived. So in return, these are the things we expect. The declared free trade zone must employ Nigerians. It must train Nigerians at all levels. Professional, semi-skilled, unskilled, must be trained. It must transfer technology. Primarily it was designed to bring in foreign investment. We have a lot of local investment now. It must transfer technology. And very importantly, and this is sometimes missed by both the Nigerian public and the government, some other government agencies, very importantly, they are supposed to develop their local communities.
However, some of the benefits to businesses operating in the zone seem threatened by part of the reform tax law, which states that if an enterprise sells up to 25% of its goods into the Nigerian market, it faces proportionate taxes. If 128 profit by a free zone entity from sale domestic country fully subject tax regardless of the percentage.
Because of those laws, I believe some foreign direct investment is probably slipping into other West African countries like Ghana and all those areas, because they are just concerned not so much about the law, but about the unpredictability of having a free zone in Nigeria. So some of them will slip away to they have done, to the nearby countries.
Lagos Free Trade Zone, an 860 hectares industrial hub in Ibeju-Lekki, is one of the active economic zones in the country's commercial capital. It boasts of different businesses. For instance, operators of the zone say foreign exchange that would have been sourced for the purchase of some industrial building materials has been reduced by the availability of locally manufactured materials.
Here we are standing in bay number 1. It is cold form productions. Here we produce louvers, Z-C purlins, roofing sheets. So it is cold form. We produce here building materials. On bay number 2, it is our detailing bay where we produce small items, small drilling, everything is the tiniest items. In bay number 3 is our welding bay, where we actually, it's heart of factory, we will go to this machine where we actually creating I-beam. I-beams, columns, which are going to be installed at the site. We only import raw materials, steel plates, from our suppliers, mainly it's from China. We have long-term partners there who achieve that quality which we need. Unfortunately, we don't have raw steel plates or coils in Nigeria, but we are trying to push it with Minister of Steel also. So after we receive raw materials, all products, roofing sheets, cladding, purlins, steel beams, everything is produced here for Nigerian market. Our market is Nigeria.
The companies are also offered ease of doing business.
It makes the total supply chain for industries within the zone very efficient. Clients within the zone through our green channel from the port to the zone ensure faster, seamless movement of goods from the zone to the enterprises manufacturing site, and you can do that within 24 to 72 hours from vessel arrival, right? And this is one of the key changes which you cannot get in any port anywhere in Nigeria. All right, so we have done a dedicated lane, a dedicated transport line between the ports and the zone, right? So at vessels arrival, the cargoes that are designated for the zone has a dedicated lane it takes from here into the zone itself, and this can be done within 24 to 48 hours. We have customs on board 24 hours. We have customs on board, so all the clearance of those cargoes are done at the client's facility because it's a bonded zone.
Other benefits for the economy is through the social impact.
In Lagos Free Zone, sustainability is a core part of our strategy. We look at what sustainability is as a whole, both financial and non-financial. For the non-financial sustainability, we look at the air, the water, the waste, how we can make waste circular, how we can reutilize things and ensure that we keep the business going without affecting the environment. Specifically, if you look at the water, we have ponds and lakes around the zone where we harvest rainwater and reuse it. We paved our roads with paver blocks, so that rainwaters can infiltrate and recharge the groundwater. Specifically for the community, we have a community development plan, and this is based on our community need assessment done years back. We've interacted with the communities and with the businesses around to understand the issues of the surrounding area. And our aim is that as we grow, the community should grow alongside us.
While the government expects contributions from the corporate, the zones are expected to be equipped with infrastructure to ease their operations to avoid situations as the concern in Calabar Trade Zone, where stakeholders had raised issues of insecurity, power shortages, and bureaucratic bottlenecks, as well as overlapping government agencies and frequent policy changes that have limited operations and field theft of equipment. All right, that's a visit that I did to the Free Trade Zone in Lagos and some of my findings there. Mr. Ayemi, but I hope we still have you. Okay, so issues raised there, I know we've already touched on some of it, like the Calabar zone and the issues that they have, but also the issue of infrastructure within the zone, which seems, as you said, yes, I can, even when they can bring in those raw materials, but how do we get the finished products out? And I know you mentioned the issue of connecting the zone in Lagos, for instance, to the rail. I don't think that's being practiced yet, though.
Not yet, not yet. But I must commend the fact that they are clearing within 24 to 48 hours getting into the factory. That's very commendable. Which is why I said, look, a port is useless. Sorry, a free zone is useless if you don't have a port, because it's supposed to be industrial zone. Goods is coming. I mean, raw materials are coming in. You're processing, and then you're able to push it out to be able to add value to the economy as much as possible. But like I said, there is a life. There is a lot of what everybody has done has created a lot of life in the Lagos Free Zone and also in the Lekki Free Zone. What I think needs to be done is to encourage other governors in other places to be able to take a leap from what has been done and be able to add life to what is happening in their location. But if they are going to be able to do it and bring life to those zones in other parts of the country, then the infrastructure must be in place, particularly access to ports, because there's an advantage, the fact that you are not going to pay duty. And of course, with the tax law that is now limiting how much shipment you can do, and the fact that you have to now begin to pay duty for a certain amount of shipment into the zone also is a discouragement. I hope maybe, I mean, if the head of the agency is talking about this, Minister of Finance, I'm sure will have heard about that. And I don't know if there was no conversation with them during the hearing, I mean the public hearing regarding the tax law. Maybe there will be need for an amendment so that what the DG confirmed about movement of FDI to other nearby countries can stop because of, I mean, if there's an amendment of that law afterward.
Yeah, well, I guess we did agree at the beginning that this law will need amendments because if it's not happening in other countries and we have competition close to us, Cotonou, they have great ports and all of that, then that could be a challenge for us. So in the process of raising revenue, we're now driving away the source of revenue. But I guess that's up to NEBSA to follow up with the minister or the lawmakers for that amendment if they perceive that it is something that is really important. But the other part, the good thing about these zones is, I mean, as you heard there for Lagos Free Zone, they try to work with the community. I imagine that if all the zones or the economic zones that we have in Nigeria work with their community, I know that late last year there was the initiation of the Ajaokuta Economic Zone. And we know what has happened, the potential that as a country, we are missing from Kogi State through Ajaokuta, not just the steel mill, but the environment and all of that. So I'm just trying to imagine that if all the zones impact their community through education, through jobs, a skills transfer, I mean, that will go a whole lot to reduce the number of unemployments that we really have.
Yes, in fact, some have had their projects stalled because of land dispute, resettlement, and the like. So if if you are going to be able to grow the business, and in fact, not just hiring their children, the citizen or the people in the community, either both the skilled and unskilled worker to be able to get something doing within the factory, number one, so they can have a sense of ownership. They might not have the right skill, but there are still some blue-collar jobs that they can train them to be able to do. And like you said, more importantly also is to ensure that the community, from school to hospital to infrastructure, are built. So the community can be happy that, look, at least, even if the government has not been able to do this organization who is making money in this place is also remembering us and doing something for us, which I think is a good initiative, so that we avoid some of these disputes, because they have to do some resettlement actually. And so after some years, some of them will come back and say, no, you can't build here. And basically what they are saying is that, what do we benefit from what you are going to be doing in our environment?
So, well, at least we have started this journey of economic zones. We only hope that we can provide those infrastructure and reduce policy uncertainty, which is one of the things that the CEO said, of NEBSA. Reduce that and then give them the infrastructure they need and then wait for those benefits. Mr. Ayemibo, well, thank you so much for coming on the program. Or any final words on this issue?
Yes, we need to grow non-oil export. And economic zone, like I said, in the case of China, a very good example. In fact, at some point, some countries have been able to do up to Dominican Republic, up to 90% of their export was from this zone at some point. In Nigeria today, we have so many. It's interesting to know that over 40 have been licensed. But guess what? Only about 20-something are operational. Out of the over 40, I think about 47 or thereabout, 42 licensed and about 25 operational. And some of the issues we've discussed today. And these are necessary for us to be able to grow non-oil export in Nigeria. Because if we do a lot in the free trade zone, we'll be able to grow non-oil export from about 6.2 billion according to NEPC to whatever it is, the double export initiative of the Nigerian Export Promotion Council.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ayemibo, for sharing
Thank you very much for having me,
perspective with us. Mr. Bamidele Ayemibo is the Chief Executive Officer and Lead Consultant at 3T Impex Trade Academy. Thank you.